came in, I was for it. I've never opposed the Maple Leaf flag, so don't say monarchists are against. Some monarchists are against it. I know some Republicans who are against the change. So you can't just sort of say, oh, monarchists were all for this, monarchists were all for that. Monarchists have diverse views on many other issues.
No, I'm saying that they were all stages in Canada's evolution.
Yeah, and they all happened under the monarchy. The flag was proclaimed by the Queen. It's the flag of the Queen of Canada. It's a national flag symbolizing the Queen's authority. It's a very monarchical symbol.
But if Canada was being formed today from scratch, there's not a chance that Canada would be a monarchy.
Oh, of course
it was something that was put in place at a time when the British Empire was at its peak, and we've gradually been chipping away at it until we've got one last step to deal with.
Well,
all of the advancements that we've talked about, that I've talked about, aren't necessarily erosions of the monarchy itself, and I made a special point of saying that they were evolutionary steps to Canadian independence.
Yep.
And some of them may be Republican, some of them may not be.
But when you move
but
from
the final step is
that's not evolution, that's revolution. You can evolve. Republics can evolve. There were colonial republics under republics that have evolved, so that's fine. Evolution within either system is natural and should happen. But there's one other question I want to ask you about. You talked about how awful inherited rights are and getting things by birth, right?
In government.
Yeah, okay. You said you were born in Canada, right? You're a Canadian citizen because you were born here. I'm a Canadian citizen because I was born here. What right do we have to be Canadian citizens just by birth? We became Canadian citizens the same way.
Involved in the government.
Yes, you are. You get to vote for your members of parliament. You get to vote for your mayor. That's an important power.
I'm not a representative.
That doesn't matter. We're not talking about representatives. We're talking about, do you have inherited rights? The point is, you have inherited rights. The Queen became Queen of Canada by birth. You became a Canadian citizen by birth. I became a Canadian citizen by birth. We should have a vote every year, if you're going to be Republican, whether or not to abolish Tom Freda. And we're going to vote whether to abolish Garry Toffoli. I mean, be consistent. I'm consistent. I support the hereditary rights of the Queen. I support the hereditary rights of people born here.
If you want consistency, why not go into the rebellion of 1837?
Gladly.
All right. Well, what was the main benefit of that? The Republicans lost, but monarchists have taken credit for the main event that came out of that, responsible government.
Because monarchists were promoting responsible government. The rebellion set it back.
To take it. Otherwise, there would have been a revolt.
No.
And that's my point exactly, that every advancement that there's been in Canada's development, and even the United Kingdom's development into democracy,
the 1837 rebellion
at the expense of the monarchy.
Learn some history, Tom.
Okay.
The 1837 rebellion set back the development of responsible government. It didn't aid it.
Okay, so thank you very much, gentlemen. This does conclude the debating portion, surprisingly enough, of the evening, where the speakers have a chance to present their own arguments. What we're going to do now is we're going to open it up to questions. So we're going to begin with 2 questions which I have prepared in advance, and I've kind of modified as the debate has progressed. And then we will open it up to the floor to questions. So right before we get to the audience, I have 2 questions that I will ask. But then you're next. Okay, so the first respondent will be Garry, and followed by a response by Tom. Each of them will have 2 minutes to answer this question. And the question is, how will this debate be won in the hearts and minds of Canadians? Through appeals to logic and reason, or to passion and emotion? And you have 2 minutes, Garry.
I think, to be honest, everyone would have to say both. Human beings, as I suggested in the beginning, have logical reasons for things they do, and emotion is an important part of our lives. If you're going to be rational, you have to acknowledge the irrational, if you want, or the emotional. I mean, the finest things in our lives are probably based on emotion, love, affection, our sentiments. So to pretend that we don't have sentiments, again, is to deny our humanity. So I don't think we can discount the emotional appeal of a particular form of government, because it has to address our human needs, and therefore emotion is a part of that. But it shouldn't be exclusively that, just in our own lives. I think if our lives existed solely on emotion, we would live in chaos. At the same time, if our lives were solely rational and had no emotion, they'd be very sterile. So what we try to do in our lives is combine emotion and rationality and reason and work it all out and come up with a balance. Monarchists believe in balance in individual lives and in government. So yes, government should appeal to both, and I think the decision of Canadians will be based on both rational assessment and the emotional understanding of what is necessary in a society.
Thank you, Garry. Tom?
Well, I'd agree with that to a certain extent, but I also believe that Canadians are increasingly having a better sense of their identity as a people and a nation. And there's really one thing keeping the monarchy in existence, and even most monarchists would agree that it's not going to last forever. It's just a matter of when, not if. And the only thing keeping the monarchy in place right now is personal affection for the Queen herself. And once the Queen is gone, Canadians will have a much clearer head on the details and the pragmatics, and they'll realize that, and they are now, with the expectation that Prince Charles is going to be Canada's next head of state, whether we want to or not, whether we have any choice in it or not, Canadians, and that's why the polls are increasing daily for ending the monarchy, because Canadians know that when the Queen's gone, we're faced with a whole new ball of wax. So that's where the pragmatics comes in.
You still have another minute.
Pretty well, that's it. You know, the Queen does carry a lot of personal affection, and I'm going to read, if I've got a little extra time, I'm going to read a quotation by the Prime Minister of Jamaica, P.J. Patterson. "I love the Queen dearly, but the time has come when we must have a head of state chosen by us, representative of us, and immediately accountable to us. The majority of the people in Jamaica are ready to consign to history the last vestiges of colonialism." And that basically sums up the situation throughout the Commonwealth. The British Empire has been dead a long time, and it's time for us to move on.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Tom, you're also going to be the first to respond to this next question. So the question is, should Canada cease to be a monarchy? What implications does your answer have to the Canadian identity? And this is our sense of self and who we are on the world stage. And a follow-up question would be, are all of these implications positive? Tom, 2 minutes.
Well, the monarchy, I believe, is a detriment to Canadian identity, and unless, of course, you're a devout monarchist, and they represent a very small minority of Canadians. Polls show it's somewhere in the under 20% range, and they're getting fewer and fewer. Canadians are quickly, as Australians and other citizens throughout the Commonwealth, are realizing that, as I say, the empire has come and gone. We're evolving as nations. We're getting a better sense of our own uniqueness in the world. And that means not sharing our government and our head of state with another nation. And all one has to do is, and we evaluate these figures quite carefully. Public opinion is very, very important to how our organization understands what's happening and where the public is going on this. And if you want to look at our identity as a people, all you have to do is look at the divide between Francophone and Anglophone Canada. We have a unity crisis in Canada. It's not quite so newsworthy right now, but it's still there. Quebecers are overwhelmingly against the monarchy. They're not in favor of a Quebec Republic. The polls show they want a Canadian Republic, in the vicinity of 75%. Canada becoming a republic, ending its ties with the British monarchy, would, in one stroke of a pen, considerably minimize the national unity crisis that we have right now, and put us well on the way to becoming what we should be and what we can be, a fully united country without any colonial ties.
Thank you very much, Tom. Garry, you have 2 minutes.
Well, the Canadian identity and the Canadian monarchy are intimately connected with each other right from the beginning of our history. Tom talks about the Quebec. The French tradition in Canada is a monarchical tradition. We live in North America. Being confused with Englishmen is not high on my list. Not many people would think I'm an Englishman. If we're worrying about our identity, there are two things. One is what has come out of our legitimate heritage and history. That's part of our identity, what we are. And secondly, for comparative purposes of how we're seen in the world's environment, it will be vis-a-vis the United States. A Canadian republic will not enhance Canadian identity vis-a-vis the United States. It will be a pale imitation of the American Republic. Why is there a Canada? Canada is that part of North America that did not want to be a republic. That was the basis upon which the people who are now Canadians came together throughout our history. Remove